We live in a world where most of us shy away from thinking about life's worst-case scenarios. It's uncomfortable, even a little scary. But what if avoiding those thoughts actually makes us more fragile when adversity strikes? The ancient Stoics believed that true resilience comes not from pretending life will always go perfectly, but from preparing our minds for the inevitable challenges we all face. Epictetus once said, "Difficulties show a person's character, so when trouble comes, think of yourself as a wrestler who has been paired with a tough opponent." For what good is a wrestler who never faces a challenge? In this video, we're diving into the powerful practice of negative visualization, a tool used by the Stoics to face life's uncertainties with courage and clarity. By the end, you'll learn how to use this technique to not only handle setbacks but to strengthen your mind and thrive in an unpredictable world. Let's explore how this ancient wisdom can transform the way we live today. Imagine this: you've got an important meeting tomorrow, and as you lie in bed, your mind starts racing with questions. What if I say the wrong thing? What if the technology fails? What if I completely embarrass myself? Most of us instinctively recoil from these thoughts. We try to push them aside or distract ourselves because they're unpleasant and maybe even a little terrifying. But here's where the Stoics would step in and say, hold on. Instead of running from those fears, what if you leaned into them? What if you used them as tools to prepare your mind and build resilience? This is the essence of negative visualization. In Stoicism, negative visualization is the intentional practice of imagining worst-case scenarios, not to dwell on negativity or invite misfortune, but to prepare ourselves for life's inevitable unpredictability. When you think about it, life is full of uncertainties and problems are bound to arise whether we anticipate them or not. By deliberately confronting those potential difficulties in our minds, we can reduce their emotional impact and equip ourselves to respond more calmly and wisely when they happen. Now, let's address a common misconception. Negative visualization is not about becoming a pessimist or expecting the worst to happen all the time. The Stoics weren't doom and gloom philosophers who saw the glass as perpetually half empty. Instead, they advocated for this practice as a way to develop mental clarity and inner peace. Seneca, one of the most well-known Stoic thinkers, puts it beautifully. The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. In other words, expecting adversity doesn't make life worse, it makes you stronger. It's like rehearsing for a play. By practicing how you'll respond to challenges in advance, you're less likely to be caught off guard when the curtain rises. Think of it this way: if you were heading out for a hike in a remote location, wouldn't you prepare for the possibility of bad weather, a map getting lost, or running out of water? You wouldn't call those preparations pessimistic, you'd call them smart. Negative visualization works in much the same way. By imagining how things could go wrong, you prepare yourself mentally and emotionally, so you're less likely to panic or spiral into despair if things don't go as planned. And here's the surprising part: this practice often leads to greater gratitude and appreciation for the present moment. When we visualize losing something, a job, a relationship, or even our health, it reminds us not to take those things for granted. It shifts our perspective. For example, if you imagined life without your closest friend, you'd likely feel a wave of gratitude for their presence in your life right now. In this way, negative visualization isn't just about resilience, it's also about fostering a deeper sense of joy and contentment. So, how do you start using this practice in your daily life? It's simpler than you might think. Start by identifying something you're worried about or a scenario you hope to avoid. Then, calmly and intentionally imagine the worst-case outcome. What would it look like? How would you handle it? Be specific. If you're worried about losing a job, imagine how you'd respond: cutting expenses, reaching out to your network, finding new opportunities. Then ask yourself, would I survive this? Most of the time, the answer is yes, and this realization alone can be incredibly empowering. Negative visualization, far from being an exercise in dread, is a way to gain control over our fears. It reminds us that while life may throw curveballs, we have the strength and resourcefulness to face them. By practicing this technique, you're not just preparing for challenges, you're building a mindset that allows you to live with greater confidence and peace, no matter what the future holds. Life today is filled with challenges, stressful jobs, unpredictable setbacks, and constant uncertainty about what tomorrow might bring. Whether it's a missed promotion, an unexpected bill, or even a major life event, these obstacles can feel overwhelming. But here's the thing, resilience, the ability to adapt and bounce back, isn't something we either have or don't have. It's a skill, and like any skill, it can be cultivated. This is where the practice of negative visualization becomes so powerful. By imagining life's inevitable difficulties, we prepare ourselves emotionally and mentally to face them with strength and clarity. Let's take a moment to think about resilience. At its core, being resilient doesn't mean avoiding hardship or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about maintaining your composure and making thoughtful, deliberate choices in the face of adversity. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively about preparing for the worst without letting it break your spirit. In his Meditations he reflected, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This approach isn't about eliminating challenges, it's about mastering the way we respond to them. So how does negative visualization fit into this? Imagine for a moment that you're starting a new project at work. You might feel excited, but perhaps there's also a lingering sense of anxiety. What if the timeline slips? What if the client isn't happy? Instead of letting those fears paralyze you or trying to suppress them, negative visualization encourages you to confront them head-on. Picture the worst-case scenarios. The project goes over budget, a key team member drops the ball, or the client demands revisions. Now ask yourself, how could you respond? What steps could you take to minimize the impact? By rehearsing these outcomes in your mind, you're not just preparing for the possibility of failure, you're equipping yourself to stay composed and take action if things don't go as planned. This mental preparation builds resilience in a profound way. First, it reduces the element of surprise. When challenges arise unexpectedly, our initial reaction is often shock or denial, which leaves us feeling stuck or overwhelmed. But when you've already visualized a difficult scenario, it's less likely to catch you off guard. You've mentally rehearsed your response, so instead of freezing, you're more likely to adapt and move forward. Second, it helps you see that no matter how daunting a situation might seem, you have the inner resources to deal with it. This realization can be incredibly empowering. Here's another example. Let's say you're worried about financial struggles. Negative visualization might mean imagining what life would look like if you lost a significant portion of your income. It's not a pleasant thought, but it forces you to ask important questions. Could you live with fewer luxuries? Could you downsize or find creative ways to earn money? Most of us find that when we face these fears directly, they lose some of their power. We realize that, while difficult, we could adapt and survive. And here's the key: imagining these outcomes doesn't mean you expect or want them to happen. It's not about living in fear of the worst. Instead, it's about grounding yourself in reality and developing the emotional fortitude to handle life as it is, not as we wish it to be. This practice helps cultivate a mindset where challenges become opportunities to grow rather than reasons to crumble. In today's fast-paced, unpredictable world, resilience is more important than ever. Stress, uncertainty, and setbacks are part of life, and no amount of planning can shield us entirely from hardship. But when we practice negative visualization, we take a proactive approach to life's difficulties. We strengthen our ability to face challenges with less fear and more resolve. Resilience is like a muscle. The more we work at it, the stronger it becomes. And through this practice, we not only prepare ourselves for the worst, but also learn to appreciate the present moment. After all, knowing you can handle what's ahead makes it easier to find peace and gratitude in the here and now. Have you ever noticed how much time we spend worrying about what might go wrong? It's like our brains have this built-in alarm system, constantly scanning for potential threats. And while this tendency was useful for our ancestors, helping them survive in a dangerous world, it can feel overwhelming in today's modern life. The fear of the unknown, the what-if scenarios we create in our heads, can lead to anxiety and stress that paralyze us. But interestingly, the practice of negative visualization taps into this natural tendency in a way that is psychologically beneficial, turning our worries into tools for growth and resilience. Let's explore the psychology behind this. At its core, negative visualization is about anticipating potential challenges without catastrophizing them. By intentionally imagining a worst-case scenario, we take control of the narrative. Instead of letting fear dictate our thoughts, we approach those fears with curiosity and structure. This process mirrors techniques used in modern cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. In CBT, one strategy for managing anxiety is called exposure. It involves gradually facing the things that make us uncomfortable to reduce their emotional intensity over time. Similarly, negative visualization allows us to confront what we fear in a controlled way, helping us build emotional immunity to those scenarios. Here's why this works. When we visualize a negative outcome and consider how we would respond, we give our brains a chance to process that fear. This reduces the uncertainty and sense of helplessness that fuels anxiety. Psychologists have long recognized that much of anxiety comes not from the situation itself, but from our anticipation of it. The unknown looms larger in our minds than the known, but once we imagine the worst and realize, "I could handle this," we strip away some of that fear. What was once an overwhelming, shapeless threat becomes something tangible, something we can plan for and overcome. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, captured this idea beautifully when he said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." In other words, it's not the challenges we face that create suffering, but how we think about them. Negative visualization aligns perfectly with this wisdom. By choosing to face our fears mentally, we transform our perspective. We stop running from the possibility of hardship and instead learn to accept it as a natural part of life. And here's the amazing part: this acceptance doesn't make life feel heavier. It actually lightens the load. Another psychological benefit of negative visualization is that it fosters a sense of control. When we imagine a tough situation, we're not just passively worrying, we're actively engaging with it. We're asking ourselves, what would I do if this happened? What steps could I take? This shifts our mindset from one of helplessness to one of action and preparedness. As a result, we're less likely to feel blindsided if something does go wrong because, in a way, we've already rehearsed for it. To illustrate this, think about public speaking, a common source of anxiety. If you only focus on your fear, wondering what might go wrong, you might never get up in front of an audience. But by practicing negative visualization, you can prepare yourself mentally. What if I forget my points? You might imagine calmly referring to your notes. What if the audience looks bored? You could plan to ask a question to re-engage them. This mental rehearsal helps you feel more prepared and reduces the fear of the unknown. Finally, there's an unexpected but powerful side effect of negative visualization. It enhances gratitude. When we imagine life without something we value, our health, a loved one, or a job, we often find ourselves appreciating those things more deeply. This dual effect, reducing anxiety while increasing gratitude, creates a mental state of both resilience and contentment. Modern psychology and ancient Stoicism may be separated by thousands of years, but they meet on common ground here. Negative visualization isn't about dwelling on life's hardships. It's about understanding that we have the power to shape how we respond to them. By accepting that adversity is inevitable and rehearsing our responses, we're not just taming anxiety, we're building the emotional strength needed to face whatever life throws our way. As the Stoics remind us, true peace comes not from avoiding challenges, but from preparing for them with clarity and courage. Practicing negative visualization is a simple yet profoundly transformative exercise, and the beauty of it lies in how accessible it is. You don't need any special tools or a specific setting, just a few quiet moments and a willingness to engage with your thoughts in a purposeful way. Let's walk through a step-by-step outline to show exactly how you can incorporate this into your daily life. Step 1. Find a quiet time and space. The first step is to carve out a few minutes in your day where you can sit undisturbed. This might be during your morning coffee, a quiet moment before bed, or even during a short break at work. The key is to create a calm environment where you can focus without distractions. Treat this as you would any other important appointment with yourself. By setting aside intentional time, you signal to your mind that this practice matters. Step 2. Choose a specific scenario to reflect on. Start with something manageable, perhaps a small worry you've been carrying or a situation that feels uncertain. For instance, you might think about an upcoming presentation, a difficult conversation you need to have, or even a larger life challenge like financial stress. The idea here is to focus on one scenario rather than letting your mind wander through multiple fears. This keeps the exercise grounded. Step 3. Imagine the worst-case outcome calmly. This step is when negative visualization begins to work its magic. Picture the potential difficulties or failures in vivid detail. What's the worst that could happen? If it's an important meeting, perhaps you imagine forgetting your key points, stumbling over your words, or receiving criticism. If it's about finances, you might picture losing a source of income or facing unexpected expenses. The important thing here is to approach this calmly, almost as if you're observing the scene from a distance. You're not trying to spiral into fear or anxiety. You're simply acknowledging what could happen. Step 4. Reflect on how you would handle the situation. Now shift your focus to solutions. If the worst were to happen, how would you cope? What steps could you take to minimize the impact or recover? For instance, if you flubbed your presentation, could you acknowledge the mistake and refocus? If you faced a financial setback, could you rely on savings, seek support, or adjust your spending? This part of the exercise is empowering because it shifts your mindset from fear to preparation. By thinking through your options, you remind yourself that you have the tools and resilience to navigate challenges. Step 5. Reframe your perspective. Once you've gone through the worst-case scenario and your responses to it, take a moment to reflect on what you still have in the present. This is where gratitude naturally begins to emerge. You might realize, yes, the worst could happen, but I still have my skills, my support system, or my health. This step helps balance the exercise, preventing it from feeling heavy or negative. Instead of dwelling on loss, you come away with a renewed appreciation for what's good in your life. Finally, step 6. Repeat the practice regularly. Like any skill, the benefits of negative visualization grow with consistency. Set aside time to do this once or twice a week, or even daily if it feels helpful. You might focus on different scenarios each time or revisit recurring worries to reinforce your mental preparedness. Over time, this habit will rewire the way you approach challenges, making you more resilient and less reactive to life's uncertainties. The beauty of negative visualization lies in its simplicity and practicality. In just a few minutes, you can transform vague fears into clear scenarios, prepare for adversity, and shift your mindset from anxiety to confidence. It's not about fixating on what could go wrong. It's about building the mental strength to face life as it is. So, the next time you find yourself worrying about tomorrow, try this exercise. You might be surprised by how powerful it can be. One of the most fundamental truths in Stoicism and in life is the impermanence of everything we hold dear. People we love, possessions we cherish, opportunities we work so hard for, none of them are guaranteed to last forever. This might sound like a bleak outlook, but for the Stoics, it's actually the key to living a more fulfilling and grounded life. By acknowledging and imagining the impermanence of the things we value, we develop a deeper appreciation for them in the present moment. In other words, understanding that we may one day lose what we love helps us cherish it while we still have it. Seneca, a prominent Stoic philosopher, captured this idea beautifully when he wrote, "You should live as if already living without the people you love, so that you may not cling to them too much." He wasn't suggesting we detach ourselves emotionally or live in perpetual sorrow. Instead, he was teaching us to savor the connections and experiences of life with a heightened awareness of their fragility. This mindset, though challenging at first, is incredibly liberating because it frees us from taking things for granted. When we remind ourselves that nothing is permanent, we stop sleepwalking through our days and start paying closer attention to the beauty of what's in front of us. Let's consider a real-life example to help illustrate this practice. Imagine someone close to you, a parent, partner, sibling, or best friend. For a moment, picture how your life might change if they were no longer there. How would their absence feel? What little things about them would you miss? The sound of their laugh, the way they tell a story, or even the small habits that sometimes annoyed you? While this exercise can stir up difficult emotions, it also tends to make one thing crystal clear. The presence of this person in your life is a gift, not a guarantee. By visualizing their absence, you're reminded to treasure the time you have with them now. You may feel inspired to call them, hug them a little tighter, or simply tell them how much they mean to you. This practice doesn't just apply to relationships, it works with possessions and opportunities too. Think about something you value, a cherished keepsake, a home, or even your career. Reflect on what it would be like to live without it. How would you adapt? What aspects of it do you often overlook or take for granted? By doing this, you start to notice the things you've stopped appreciating. Maybe you've become so focused on the stress of work that you've forgotten how fulfilling your job can be. Or maybe you've been so busy looking for the next big thing in life that you've neglected to enjoy the comfort of the home you already have. Imagining the loss of these things brings their value into sharper focus, often sparking a renewed sense of gratitude for what you have right now. Preparing for loss is not about dwelling on worst-case scenarios or living in constant fear of what the future holds. On the contrary, it's about anchoring yourself in the present moment and reducing the emotional turmoil that comes with attachment. When we accept that loss is inevitable, we stop clinging so tightly to the things and people around us. This doesn't mean we stop loving them. In fact, it's quite the opposite. By embracing impermanence, we can love and appreciate everything more deeply because we know how precious it truly is. Ultimately, practicing this mental exercise helps us develop a mindset that is both resilient and peaceful. If and when loss does occur, we're better prepared to face it with grace and understanding. And until then, we're able to live with greater joy, gratitude, and connection to the world around us. The Stoics remind us that life is fleeting, but recognizing that truth can make each moment infinitely more meaningful. By imagining the absence of what we cherish, we transform our experience of having it, and that's a gift we can carry with us every single day. Let's talk about one of the most universal fears we all face, the fear of failure. Whether it's presenting a big idea at work, starting a new relationship, or chasing a personal goal, that little voice in the back of your head often whispers, "What if this doesn't work out? What if I fail?" Maybe you hesitate to speak up in a meeting because you're worried your ideas will be dismissed. Or perhaps you avoid taking a creative risk, fearing your efforts won't measure up. That fear can feel paralyzing, and it's easy to let it stop you before you even start. But here's where the Stoics offer a radically different perspective, a tool that can help you break free from that paralysis: negative visualization. Instead of resisting or suppressing the fear of failure, imagine it. Sit with the possibility that things won't go the way you hope. What would it actually look like if you failed? Let's say you're gearing up to ask for a promotion at work. The fear of rejection looms over you. Now, take a moment to picture the worst-case scenario. Maybe your manager says no. Maybe you feel embarrassed or disappointed. What then? Would your career be over? Would you lose all your credibility? Probably not. You'd likely go back to your role, take time to regroup, and maybe use the experience to refine your approach for next time. By visualizing this outcome, you pull the fear out of the shadows and into the light, where it becomes far less intimidating. The beauty of this process lies in how it shifts your perspective. Fear of failure often stems from over-identifying with the outcome. We tell ourselves that if we fail, it defines us, that we're not good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. But by imagining failure in a detached and deliberate way, we remind ourselves that outcomes don't define our worth. Marcus Aurelius captured this idea perfectly when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. In other words, our role is to put in the effort, to do the work, and to act in accordance with our values. The result, that's beyond our control. It's liberating to let go of the need for everything to go perfectly and instead focus on what you can influence: your thoughts, your actions, and your integrity. Let's take an example from personal relationships. Maybe you want to tell someone how you feel about them, but the fear of rejection keeps holding you back. What if they don't feel the same? What if you ruin the relationship altogether? Negative visualization allows you to confront those fears directly. Imagine that the worst happens. They don't reciprocate your feelings and the dynamic between you changes. It might sting, sure, but life would go on. You'd find a way to heal, and at least you'd have the closure of knowing you tried. And here's the surprising part. Sometimes when you allow yourself to face these imagined fears, you realize that you've been inflating them in your mind. The worst-case scenario is rarely as catastrophic as it feels in the moment. This practice also helps you focus on what still remains within your control. If failure in any endeavor is a possibility, how can you prepare yourself to bounce back? What steps could you take to reduce the impact or learn something valuable from the experience? This proactive mindset turns fear into an opportunity for growth. You stop seeing failure as a dead end and start seeing it as just another step on the path forward. Ultimately, negative visualization teaches us that failure isn't something to fear. It's something to expect, accept, and prepare for. It's part of the human experience, and it can even be a powerful teacher. The Stoics understood that it's not failure that harms us, it's our reaction to it. By imagining failure and detaching from the emotional weight we place on it, we free ourselves to take bold, meaningful action. So the next time fear of failure creeps in, try this practice, confront it, explore it, and remind yourself that you are more than the sum of your successes or setbacks. Success or failure, your strength lies in showing up and giving your best effort, and that's something no outcome can ever take away. Picture this: a woman named Sarah is preparing for a major presentation at work. She's been working on it for weeks, but as she walks into the meeting room, the projector suddenly malfunctions. The slides she painstakingly crafted are now inaccessible. Most people would panic in this situation, racing thoughts, sweaty palms, a growing sense of dread creeping up, but not Sarah. She takes a deep breath, calmly addresses the room, and delivers her presentation without the slides, relying on her knowledge and preparation. While the situation isn't ideal, she handles it with composure, earning respect for her ability to adapt under pressure. What's Sarah's secret? She had already considered the possibility of this happening. By visualizing setbacks ahead of time, she wasn't caught off guard when things didn't go as planned. This is one of the most profound benefits of practicing negative visualization. It equips us with the emotional stability to face life's inevitable setbacks. Think of stress and unexpected challenges as storms. Practicing negative visualization is like building a sturdy shelter in advance. When the storm comes, you're not scrambling to find cover, you're already prepared. The ancient Stoics deeply understood this. They taught that while we can't always control the external events that happen to us, we can control how we choose to perceive and respond to them. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Negative visualization helps us internalize this lesson. By deliberately imagining potential obstacles or crises, we train our minds to respond with calmness and rationality rather than letting emotions like panic, anger, or despair take the wheel. Let's think about why this works. Often when we face an unexpected challenge, much of the stress comes from the shock of the event itself. It feels sudden, overwhelming, and out of our control. But when you've already rehearsed such scenarios in your mind, you take away their ability to surprise you. You've already explored how you might respond, so instead of being reactive, you can be proactive. You've built a mental buffer that allows you to approach the situation with clarity. The Stoics called this ability to maintain emotional equilibrium apatheia, which doesn't mean a lack of emotion, but rather a state where our emotions are aligned with reason and remain under our control. Negative visualization reinforces this Stoic ideal. Imagine the emotional whirlwind of losing something important, a job, a relationship, or even a beloved possession. Without preparation, the immediate reaction might be one of panic or devastation. But if you've practiced imagining life without that thing or person, you're better equipped to handle the loss with acceptance. This doesn't mean the pain disappears, but it helps you keep perspective, reducing the overwhelming flood of emotions and making space for more constructive responses. Here's another example. When Marcus Aurelius was emperor of Rome, he faced relentless challenges, wars, political betrayals, and even a devastating plague. Yet his writings in Meditations reveal a leader who remained calm and composed despite the chaos around him. His ability to remain steady in the face of adversity was rooted in practices like negative visualization. Marcus frequently reminded himself that hardship was inevitable and that his role was not to avoid it but to meet it head-on with rationality and integrity. We can apply the same principles in our daily lives. Imagine preparing for a difficult conversation with a friend or family member. By using negative visualization, you might consider the worst-case scenarios. What if they get upset? What if they say something hurtful? Then, you reflect on how you would maintain your composure and respond thoughtfully. This mental rehearsal helps you approach the conversation grounded in emotional stability, rather than being blindsided by emotions if things don't go smoothly. Ultimately, practicing negative visualization conditions us to distinguish between what we can control, our reactions, thoughts, and actions, and what we cannot control, like the actions of others or unpredictable events. By focusing on what's within our sphere of influence, we become less reactive and more resilient. The goal isn't to suppress emotion but to keep it balanced so it supports rather than undermines our ability to navigate challenges. Over time, this practice transforms how we approach stress and setbacks, allowing us to meet life's storms not with fear, but with the quiet confidence of someone who's prepared for whatever comes their way. Take a moment to reflect on this. What's one thing in your life that you fear losing? Maybe it's your home, your job, a prized possession, or even a sense of status or recognition. Why is this fear so powerful? Is it because you've built part of your identity around having it, or because losing it seems unimaginable? These questions can feel uncomfortable, but they hold a valuable key to understanding one of the most liberating aspects of negative visualization. It helps us break free from over-attachment to external possessions and outcomes. When we imagine life without the things we hold dear, something profound begins to happen. At first, it might stir discomfort, even sadness. But as we sit with the thought and explore it, we start to see that while these things are valuable, they don't define us. We realize that we can endure and adapt even in their absence. This practice doesn't diminish the enjoyment we get from these things. Instead, it reduces their power over us. The fear of losing them loosens its grip, and with it, the constant anxiety of, "What if I lose this?" starts to fade. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes not from acquiring more but from needing less. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, famously said, "It is not the man who has too little but the man who craves more who is poor." What he's pointing to is the way our attachments can trap us. The more we convince ourselves that we must have something to be happy, whether it's wealth, possessions, or approval, the more vulnerable we become to fear, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. Negative visualization helps us reverse this mindset. By imagining the loss of something, we not only prepare ourselves for that potential reality, but also remind ourselves that our well-being isn't truly dependent on it. Let's make this more relatable with an example. Imagine you're deeply attached to your car. It's your pride and joy, a symbol of your hard work. Now imagine that it's suddenly gone. Maybe it's stolen or totaled in an accident. At first, this thought might feel jarring, even scary. But as you lean into it, you might begin to realize that while losing the car would be inconvenient, it's not the end of the world. You'd still find ways to get around. Life would go on. This mental exercise doesn't mean you stop valuing the car, but it shifts your perspective. Instead of feeling like you need the car to be happy or successful, you appreciate it for what it is, something useful and meaningful, yes, but not essential to your sense of self. This detachment doesn't just apply to material possessions. It also extends to outcomes we're striving for. Think about a big goal you're working toward, maybe getting a promotion, launching a project, or achieving a personal milestone. These aspirations can bring motivation and purpose, but they can also breed attachment. The fear of failure or falling short can weigh on you, making the journey more stressful than fulfilling. Negative visualization offers a way out. By imagining a future where the goal doesn't materialize, where the promotion doesn't happen or the project doesn't succeed, you confront your attachment to the outcome. You start to see that even if things don't go as planned, your life isn't ruined. You're still the same person, capable of finding fulfillment in other ways. This process of detachment isn't about abandoning joy or ambition, it's about approaching life with a sense of balance. When you're less attached to external possessions or outcomes, you experience greater peace because you're no longer tethered to the constant fear of losing them. You begin to enjoy things more freely without clinging to them, and paradoxically, you might find that this freedom makes you more effective in pursuing your goals because you're no longer paralyzed by the weight of "what if?" Negative visualization is a practice of liberation. It reminds us that while possessions, achievements, and relationships can add value to our lives, they don't define who we are. Who you are and what you're capable of doesn't depend on any single thing. As Seneca reminds us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. By imagining life without the things we fear losing, we free ourselves from their hold and step into a mindset of resilience, gratitude, and true freedom. Negative visualization is a powerful tool, but like any tool, it needs to be used with care. There's a delicate balance to strike between preparing for life's challenges and falling into the trap of unproductive worry. When practiced intentionally, negative visualization helps us face uncertainty with clarity and confidence. But if we're not mindful, it can easily spiral into repetitive, excessive rumination that leaves us feeling more anxious rather than less. So how do we stay on the right side of that line? The answer lies in focusing on realism, action, and calm acceptance. The key distinction is this: productive negative visualization centers on preparation, while unhelpful rumination fixates on fear. When you practice negative visualization, you're engaging with potential outcomes in a structured, intentional way. You're imagining a scenario, calmly considering how you would respond, and preparing yourself emotionally and mentally. The purpose is to build resilience and reduce the sting of surprise if challenges arise. On the other hand, rumination is an uncontrolled loop of worry. It's when your mind keeps spinning on what-if questions without ever reaching a conclusion or forming a plan. It's emotionally draining and rarely leads to constructive solutions. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, had a brilliant insight into this. He advised meeting life's challenges with a composed mind, saying, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. This is where the Stoic mindset becomes so important. The goal of negative visualization isn't to dwell on everything that could go wrong. It's to step back, look at the possibilities objectively, and remind ourselves that we have the inner resources to handle what comes our way. It's about taking the sting out of uncertainty, not amplifying it. Here's a simple way to stay grounded while practicing negative visualization. Focus on what's realistic and actionable. Let's say you're worried about a potential career setback, like losing your job. Instead of spiraling into endless what-ifs about how devastating unemployment would be, think practically. Ask yourself, what steps could I take if that happened? Who could I reach out to for support? How could I make adjustments to my budget? These are specific, actionable thoughts that help you mentally prepare without falling into despair. You're not catastrophizing, you're strategizing. Another helpful practice is to set boundaries around this exercise. Negative visualization isn't meant to dominate your thoughts all day. Think of it like a mental workout, effective when done with intention but exhausting if overdone. Spend a few focused minutes visualizing a scenario, reflecting on your response, and then letting it go. By capping the time you spend on it, you prevent your mind from wandering into unproductive worry. The goal is quality over quantity. It's also important to remind yourself that life is unpredictable by nature. While preparation can make you more resilient, it's impossible to plan for every possible outcome, and that's okay. The goal of negative visualization isn't to eliminate uncertainty, it's to help you embrace it with a steady mind. By focusing on what you can control, your reactions, your effort, and your mindset, you reduce the emotional pressure of trying to control everything else. Let's revisit Marcus Aurelius' wisdom for a moment. He constantly wrote about accepting life as it is, not as we wish it to be. He encouraged approaching problems with calm and courage, saying, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." We don't need to waste energy worrying about every potential disaster. We just need to trust in our ability to respond rationally and effectively, no matter what comes our way. In the end, negative visualization is about balance. It's a tool for building resilience and clarity, not for feeding anxiety. By focusing on preparation rather than rumination, we learn to approach life's uncertainties with composure and confidence. Challenges will come, that much we know, but with a calm mind and thoughtful preparation, we can face them with strength, grace, and the knowledge that we're ready for whatever life has in store. Some might think Stoics are just doom and gloom philosophers, constantly brooding over life's hardships, imagining the worst, and always expecting things to go wrong. If you've ever wondered whether practicing negative visualization means becoming a perpetual pessimist or adopting a bleak outlook on life, you're not alone. This is one of the biggest misconceptions about Stoicism and this particular exercise. But the truth is, negative visualization isn't about negativity at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's a practice rooted in empowerment, clarity, and even joy. Let's start by breaking down this idea that negative visualization is pessimistic. To the Stoics, a pessimistic outlook isn't about imagining the worst, it's about being unprepared for it. Negativity stems from resisting the reality of life's uncertainties, clinging to the hope that things will always go right, and then crumbling emotionally when they don't. Negative visualization, on the other hand, is an act of courage. It's intentionally facing the uncomfortable truth that things won't always go as planned, and training your mind to remain steady in the face of that truth. Epictetus said it best: "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." Negative visualization teaches us to prepare for life's challenges so that when they come, we don't grieve unnecessarily. And more importantly, it reminds us to savor and rejoice in what we already have. Another common misunderstanding is that negative visualization leads to fatalism, the idea that we accept life's hardships passively and stop striving for improvement. That couldn't be further from what the Stoics intended. Negative visualization isn't about giving up or resigning yourself to whatever happens. Instead, it's about meeting life's challenges with strength and wisdom. Think of it as a mental rehearsal. By imagining adversity, you give yourself the opportunity to reflect on how you would respond, which makes you more prepared to take action when the time comes. For example, suppose you're preparing for an important exam or project. A fatalistic mindset might lead you to think, "What's the point? Everything could go wrong anyway." But the Stoics would say, yes, everything could go wrong. Now, what's your plan? By imagining the challenges you might face, perhaps struggling with nerves or running out of time, you position yourself to address them calmly and thoughtfully. Instead of being paralyzed by fear or uncertainty, you're empowered to prepare and adapt. Stoicism is active, not passive, and negative visualization sharpens your ability to respond effectively to whatever life throws your way. And here's something most people don't expect. This practice isn't just about handling setbacks, it's also about cultivating gratitude. It's easy to take the good in our lives for granted, especially when we're caught up in the hustle of daily routines. But when we deliberately imagine the loss of something we value, a relationship, a job, even something as simple as a sunny day, it brings its importance into sharper focus. Suddenly, you realize how precious those things are while you still have them. This isn't pessimism. It's a profound shift in perspective that allows you to appreciate the present moment more deeply. Here's an example you can try right now. Think of someone you love, maybe a family member or a close friend. Now imagine that tomorrow you could no longer call them or spend time with them. As uncomfortable as that thought is, it's likely followed by a wave of gratitude for their presence in your life. You might even feel inspired to reach out to them, to connect, to enjoy the time you have together more fully. This is the power of negative visualization. It doesn't diminish the joy in life, it nurtures it. In the end, negative visualization isn't about dwelling on negativity. It's about embracing reality with open eyes and an open heart. It's preparing yourself for life's challenges while deepening your appreciation for all the good that surrounds you. By practicing this, you're not becoming a pessimist or surrendering to fate. You're cultivating a mindset that is both resilient and full of gratitude, one that allows you to face life's uncertainties with clarity and strength. After all, as the Stoics believed, true peace isn't found in avoiding hardship. It's found in learning to navigate it with wisdom and grace. Negative visualization is more than just an exercise in imagining worst-case scenarios. It's a profound tool for shaping how we engage with life's uncertainties. By intentionally reflecting on potential hardships, we reduce the fear of the unknown, build mental strength, and foster a deeper appreciation for the present moment. It's not about fixating on negativity or dwelling on dread. Instead, it's about thoughtful preparation, arming ourselves with the emotional resilience to face challenges and the clarity to embrace what we already have. One of the most valuable outcomes of negative visualization is how it reduces fear. Most of our anxieties come from a deep discomfort with uncertainty. When we don't take the time to confront our fears, they tend to grow in the shadows of our minds, making them seem far worse than they actually are. But when we bring those fears into the light through visualization, we neutralize their power. We realize that while life's difficulties may be uncomfortable or inconvenient, they are rarely insurmountable. Knowing that we are capable of navigating those situations gives us a profound sense of calm. Another major benefit is the mental strength that this practice cultivates. When you regularly challenge yourself to imagine and prepare for adversity, you're essentially training your mind to become more resilient. Think of it like building a muscle. Each time you reflect on how you'd respond to potential setbacks, you become mentally stronger and less likely to be thrown off course by unexpected events. Over time, you develop an inner fortitude that allows you to approach life with greater confidence and equanimity. And perhaps most beautifully, negative visualization deepens your gratitude and appreciation for life as it is. By imagining the absence of the things we hold dear, we're reminded of their true value. This practice nudges us to cherish relationships, savor experiences, and find meaning in the everyday moments we might otherwise overlook. It's a way of celebrating life, not fearing it, a reminder that even in its impermanence, life is extraordinarily precious. As we close, let's reflect on the essence of this practice with the wise words of Marcus Aurelius. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This isn't a call to live in fear of death or loss, but an invitation to live fully and intentionally, with courage, clarity, and focus on what truly matters. Now, let's turn it over to you. How might you incorporate negative visualization into your daily life? What's one scenario or fear you could reflect on to better prepare yourself and deepen your gratitude for the moment? Take a few minutes this week to try the practice for yourself and let us know how it affects your perspective. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear how this ancient Stoic wisdom resonates with